It's a good
in that
community
mindset.
that you guys have at the youth group stuff. No, that I've been there for a few weeks now. I actually do really like that kind of community to be around there. I've become a little bit more talkative than I usually am. I haven't probably quite gotten to the point where I'm completely myself.
And
And
that's just going to take time.
yeah, well, I'm myself everywhere else except for church for some reason. So I've
And
been trying to work on that one
yeah, I'm sure it's a
specifically.
hard thing. I'm sure it's a hard thing. Just a way that I would go about asking about it is like, God, why can I be myself in all these different places? Why do I struggle here? And I would see where God will lead you in that.
Well, my biggest issue was I kind of had the obligation of myself, or I told myself, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna try and. When I'm myself, I tend to give a lot of advice. I tend to talk. I tend to do a lot of deeper conversations.
Okay.
And in a church setting, there's people that are designated to do that. So I
Okay.
was like, okay, well, I'm gonna step back and just kind of observe and watch.
Okay.
And
Oh, shoot, there's nothing
that's
wrong with
that's how I was for the first few weeks, and then I finally started opening up and talking more. And now I've gotten to the point where I've talked to quite a few people about a lot of different subjects and different interests that I have, and different leading points, or at least offering some sort of advice in different ways. And I want to eventually maybe get to where I'm leading some sort of group, and I'm not sure how that would go in the church setting. I do know that I like doing this, and I'm able to talk to a bunch of pretty cool people. And if not offer advice, maybe offer an understanding for someone else on a different point of view. Because a lot of people don't have my point of view on things as far as where they've grown up and what they've gone through. So having a story around for someone to understand and take different points off of is very useful. And mainly because a lot of people feel like they're completely alone, and because of that they strive, or they try and fit in because they want to feel like they belong somewhere.
100%.
And that leads them to doing exactly that, which is trying to fit in because they feel alone, and that leads them to feeling more alone because in the process of trying to fit in, quote unquote, that most people's definition is of fitting in, leads them to not be themselves because they feel like they can't be themselves if they're going to fit in. So then they shove themselves down, and that leads just to a cascade of negative things that could happen, because it's essentially you're living a lie because you're not being yourself. And living a lie, this is a topic that I was kind of talking about yesterday. When you're living in a lie and you're not aligning yourself with the truth, then your life becomes a living hell, literally. Because when you're aligning yourself with false realities, you're teaching yourself to try and make things seem like something they're not. And in the process of walking down that path of lies, the more lies you tell, the more you align yourself with the lies. And then eventually you start believing the lies and believing that those lies are truth.
100%.
And then all of a sudden, now your truths are lies, and you're walking in what you feel like is the truth, but it's leading you straight into spikes that you otherwise would have avoided if you weren't aligning yourself with the lies in the first place. So now your gut instincts are completely screwed over because you've aligned yourself so long with the lies of the world, or the lies that you tell yourself or other people, that your reality has become false. And now every step you take seemingly makes things worse, and then your life becomes a living hell.
That's a great way to put it. That's and at that point in my life where I was in that second relationship, at the second semester or my last semester at college, that's exactly what it felt like, because I was living that lie and believing lies that kind of became my truth, and it was pretty much like you said, living hell, because I wasn't being my true self.
And I feel like that's one of the more torturous things, because it really bogs you down. Because for one, you're not even yourself, so who are you? And
Right.
Then you feel like you want to die because you aren't yourself, and it's not necessarily that you want to die, it's that you're kind of wearing this mask for so long that you don't even know who you are, and you've lost the sense of who you are, which means you've lost any sort of sense of joy in anything that you do, because who you are and the passions that you do have, when you're chasing those, you get a better sense of fulfillment if you chase them the right way, of course.
Absolutely. And it's 100% worse when you have an understanding of how to get back to that place of doing, like, pursuing your truth and like who you really are, and you're too afraid to anyways because you don't feel like you deserve it. It is such more of a hell to be in that space.
How did you overcome it, would you say? Or have you overcome it?
I would say I'm at a much better place,
Much
where
better.
I'm a much better place in overcoming it. There's some things that I'm in counseling, and there's things that I'm going through, and now we're getting into a point of like digging through like deep-rooted stuff and like why I did some of those things and other stuff, like other addictions or like vices or like sins I really struggle with, and like keeps a wall between me and growing further in my relationship with God. And one thing that we've figured out from my last section is that I've just never thought I was good enough. I never thought I was good. I've never thought I was good enough for myself. I never thought I was for God, my friends, family, or relationships, or for anybody. And that is something that has bogged me down for years and years and years. And I don't want that to be in the way anymore. Like the thoughts and like temptation stuff, that might not necessarily go away. But now I have an understanding of. I wish I would have come more prepared in this, because I learned a while back, in having a relationship with God and being connected with the Holy Spirit, that you are given an authority. And before I heard about this, I never thought about it that way, because I was like, oh, God has all the authority because He has the power. But no, because of what Christ did, and like He gave us a way back to our Father and having a relationship, and like now we don't have to be sinners anymore. We don't have to be apart from God anymore. That's a better way to put it. We are given an authority of taking our thoughts captive, because like the thoughts and the temptations, they don't necessarily go away. That's kind of something, the idea of spiritual warfare, that's just going to be there. It's how you react to them and how you battle them is what makes you who you are in your relationship.
I would argue that you can, I guess, battle those temptations to the point where they don't really bother you anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's,
And-
it wasn't that I was saying like they won't bother you anymore, but they might still like pop up every once in a while.
Yeah, so if they're popping up every once in a while, that's just kind of like, oh, maybe it caught you off guard or something.
Yes,
right.
pretty much.
But I would say that you battle those things and you overcome those things, and they don't stay with you. They go away. Because,
And it's not like it was, like where it's constantly in your head.
right. So you've taken steps. So it's not to shed a negative light upon it. It's like, oh, these are always going to be there, even though you battle them and you're trying to get rid of them. They do go away, but every now and then, there might be a 5-second, 10-minute window where it starts coming back again, and you're like, ooh, caught me off guard a little bit. I gotta get you out of here real quick. So can't really have you hanging around.
Right. That's why I think mindset's important, and why you look at things. Why it's important to look at things in the right way. And you should. Where was I at? Why it's important to look at things the right way. You need to, for example, say like you're talking with somebody and they're just treating you like crap. Be like, oh, this person's a piece of crap for the way he's treating me. But
That's in your mind. You're saying that.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, no, not saying it to his face. This is a thought, and but we have an understanding who God is, and we know that He's a loving God, and it says in 1 Corinthians 13, I believe it's at the end. Three most important thing is faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. If we don't love others, then we're missing the whole point of why we do the things we do.
Right. And to say love, we don't necessarily mean it's all good, sunshine, and rainbows, because that's not necessarily what love is. There is good and there is bad, or there's things that are easy, right, and it just kind of goes, and there's things that are hard, like holding yourself accountable, holding others accountable, that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily, oh, this is just, love is in a super, super positive light, like nothing can go wrong. It's the hard things and the good things are all together.
100%. That's why I think society has a very skewed view of what love is, because of what we know and what we were taught from
Romance
movies,
novels
romance
like that,
and all those movies and all that crap. I mean, that's like a minuscule of it. That's like a tiny part. But I don't care what anybody says. I will die on the belief that love is a choice. You choose to love somebody.
Yeah, it's an action. Yeah,
100%.
I agree. So love is a combination of emotions. It's not necessarily. Now, I did see, it's not necessarily an emotion, sorry. I did hear something talking about love, and it's when you really love someone, you see them for who they were, past tense, who they are now, present tense, and who they could be, future tense. And you see all of those things when you're truly in love with someone. You see all of those things combined into one person. And that's such an interesting viewpoint on it, because it is, you see their past, you see their present, you see who they are now, and you see the possibility of what they could be if they push themselves to their quote unquote limits, or if they push towards their purpose. You see not exactly, but you see a good glimpse of who they could be in the future as well. And that's such an interesting concept behind love, because it's a lot of people go at the viewpoint of love. It's like, well, you should just love me for who I am right now, and I had a situation in that in my past. It's like, yeah, I do love you for who you are right now, but what kind of person would I be if I didn't try and push you to be the best version of yourself? Because then you're not moving towards anything. You're just being stagnant, and you're just being who you are now. And the process of growing, in the right way, is also the process of learning more truths, and the process of truths is a process of cutting away and burning. Right. So cutting away the false truths that you have in pursuit of the real truth. So the second you learn a truth that you identify with, right, then you have to cut away the old things that you knew, that you either convinced yourself was the truth or decided to act upon in a sort of lie and a false reality that is the truth. So I lost my train of thought. Where was I at?
You were talking about growing and finding the truths and cutting and burning, and like
right, but I led to that point after I said something else.
It was, well, you were talking about your past relationship and like,
okay, right, staying where you are.
Yes.
So,
like being stagnant.
Right. So you're not getting anywhere if you're just being stagnant. And people say, oh, you should love me for who I am, how I am, right? And yes, that is partially the case, right? You're loving them in the present, and you're loving them in the past. Or you're seeing them when you truly love someone in their past, present, future. But the past and present, you're seeing those, and that's who they are now. That's what led to who they are now. But you also want to see, or you do see what they could be in their future. And in order to get to that future, you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations and chase towards new truths, because that's the process of growing. And unless you want to grow negatively, then you can go into a false reality, and then you're growing negatively. But obviously, the ideal is you want to grow upwards. So you're seeing that part too. And when someone refuses to grow and refuses to accept that, while I do love you for who you are now, we also got stuff to do. You have to develop yourself as a person. You have to develop yourself into a stronger, more independent, a more fulfilled, a more purposeful version of you, right? And a lot of people don't see that. They just want to be loved for who they are right now and nothing else. And that gives them the ability in their mind to be just like, I can just stay like this forever and not have to worry about it, which is completely false, because you're going to suffer no matter what. You might as well suffer voluntarily going towards something that you want to achieve, right? Because we're all going to suffer. We're all going to die. It's been phrased like this before. It's like, no one gets out of here alive. This is literally a life and death game, and no one's leaving here alive, so all cards on the table, it's life or death. So you're going to die anyways, and you're going to suffer. There's 100% guarantee that you are going to suffer. So why not voluntarily take on that suffering in the pursuit of a truth, of a purpose, which is something I talked about on my 3rd episode. And you can make that connection with God, because Jesus was the way, the truth, the life. So the truth, right?
Absolutely.
So you can connect that with the teachings of Jesus and follow in his teachings and to glorify God and stuff like this, and pursue a greater version of yourself, which is what will happen in the process, right? And you're giving to other people, and you're giving to God, and you're praying, and you're following in the footsteps that you feel like, that the truth is leading you on. And while it's not the sole focus of you're trying to grow for yourself, that's not necessarily the focus behind it, but it is a side effect, and it's a very powerful side effect of pursuing God and pursuing the helping of these people, and to try and help and lead and learn more truths. In the process of that, you yourself become a much, much more powerful and purposeful person. So staying where you are is definitely not the best idea.
No. And it's funny you say that. The very first thing that I learned as growing into being an adult is that if you are somebody that thinks you have it all figured out and that you know everything, you know absolutely nothing. Because there's always something, not even on the basis of just on faith, just in life in general. If you're not learning something new and getting out of your comfort zone and learning how to grow as a person, you're kind of missing the whole point.
There's a quote that's, I don't know if I remember the exact quote, but I can say something similar at least.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, oh, I forgot it. Hold on. What were we talking about?
We were talking about
I'm so tired, dude.
About growing.
Growing. Knowledge. Got it. Hold on. The first step to knowledge is to realize that you know nothing. And a better way of maybe phrasing that is, the smartest people in the world know how much they don't know and are more aware of it. It's like they may know a lot, I may know a lot, but I'm also very aware of the stuff that I don't know. And the second you start feeling like there's nothing left to learn, you're probably going down the wrong route. Because 100%. If you feel like there's nothing left to learn, then it's like, oh, you're becoming stagnant, and you need to figure out how to fix that pretty quick, or else you're gonna be stuck in a situation that you probably don't want to be in.
Yeah, it's the exact same way in your faith, and growing your relationship with God. That's why it's important to grow and to be open to learning. And fortunately, because you could learn the wrong things too. But the more that you know God and know who He is, He will give you discernment of what is truth and what is not. So that could be a worry, but let that be for anybody that might be struggling with that. Let that be an encouragement. God will point you the right direction. You know if you know him well enough, if you communicate with them and like are growing faithfully.
Aligning yourself with the truth.
Yes, if you're aligning yourself with the truth, you will know what is true and what is not. Because that's something we were talking about earlier. It's in Matthew. Jesus gives us 2 commands. Because there's the Old Testament, we got the 10 Commandments, but this is for these commands are for post-resurrection. And he tells us that I give you 2 commands: to love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love others as yourself. And if you can do that, then if you have gained understanding of that, and that's what you pursue, you will align yourself with God's character and know what is truth.
Something that's interesting about that, and something I've thought about before, and I don't know if there's a solution that I have in my mind, whether or not I say it, but to love people as you love yourself, right? In most cases, for a long time, it would be the case of I'm more forgiving with others than I am with myself.
Absolutely.
And that's another thing, because you are your own worst critic, right? So it was kind of a thing of like, I'm more lenient with others, but in my own point of view, I am more judgmental to myself.
Absolutely.
I'm more, if I don't feel like I'm doing something right, if I'm not busy constantly 24/7, you know, I almost never give myself breaks. If I'm not doing that specifically all the time, then it's like, well, you're not really doing good. You're not, and I hold myself to a very high standard in that regard. And I've learned more and more recently, especially as I've become more social, that it is okay to take breaks every now and then, and I don't have to hold a knife over my head just for taking a small break and deciding that, hey, I've kind of burnt my brain out a little bit. Maybe I should take some time to relax and to enjoy a little bit of space, a little bit of time, a little bit of social a little bit of a social environment, and it, you know, just let myself not always be isolated and busy.
Absolutely, and definitely, it's like a recharge. It makes me think of work, and think of like a company that's giving you so much work, and they expect so much of you to just work 24/7. How are you going to get the very best out of your employees if you're constantly making them work and they're always tired? How are you going to get the best results if, like, over time you're just working them to death so much that over time, like, the product is going to come out cruddier and cruddier and cruddier. Like, I think that's why rest is so important, or like a recharge, or just stepping away for a minute. And again, not to the point where you're like going completely opposite direction, but just
well, you can have fun in a wholesome sense, and you can relax in a wholesome sense. Right?
100%.
It's not necessarily, and of course, the 7 days you get one rest day, or the Sabbath, or whatever you would call it. Right? So you're obviously supposed to rest at some point,
Yes.
and maybe I'm doing the wrong thing by not usually resting, but I usually have small rests throughout the day, which isn't a day of rest, but it's also just kind of.
But also, you're growing in the right direction. Like, you're understanding that concept, and it's just gonna take you time and like figuring out your time, figuring out the time better. And you're also super busy. You got a lot going on, so the fact that you're still able to find time to rest and still be productive, still, and not overwork yourself.
Well,
Or okay, probably still, but like maybe not to the point where it was one point. Because I mean, like, you're doing this when I'm sure you got a whole lot of other stuff to do. So
today I might actually be resting a little bit. This is probably the most effort I've put into something all day. So that's thankfully I've had pretty good rest day, but I also did not get much sleep. So I'm running on fumes today, unfortunately, which means I'm a little less talkative than I would have liked to be. But you know, we're still here. We're still getting the talk in, and we're having a good time. So
absolutely.
we're trying to learn, discussing, and that's what the idea behind this is. So
it's so cool. You're talking about a lot of people don't have your point of view. I feel like I do about like a lot of things that you've talked about. I do have your point of view. It's just something that you've talked about. You're very careful about articulating your words and just things like that. You're better putting things into words. Things that you have talked about I would say I do have like the same, I align myself the same as you do. I just wouldn't have presented it as well as you did.
That's an interesting, not conclusion, I guess, but that's an interesting thought that you said there, because I have worked on articulating for a long time, and it's one of my favorite things, I guess, to do. And it's because a lot of people have different understandings of different words. So some people are using the same words, but in their mind they mean something completely different than what the other person is hearing.
100%.
Right. So it's always a good thing to try and clarify the question that's being asked. So if you're asking me a question, I want to clarify the exact question that you're asking me, because some things can be vague and we want a direct answer. So if we can narrow that question down as much as possible, then then I can give an accurate answer to a more accurate question, or a more, not personified, but a more specific question that when the first time you say the question, it comes off as, well, I could give you so many different answers for just that one question, instead of, for example, I had a guy ask me what I wanted to do, and well, that's a vague question.
Super vague.
Yeah. So, and this was at a house party. I was only there for like 20 minutes, but he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, change the world. He said, well, that's a pretty vague, jerk off question. And that's exactly what he said. And I was, well, I didn't put it together in my head at the time, but later I thought about it. I was like, well, you kind of gave me a pretty vague question.
Yeah.
And I actually, in that same conversation, I was like, well, I can't tell you what I'm going to do in the future because I'm not there yet, but I can tell you what I'm working towards right now. And I was like, would you like that answer? And he said, yes, that would be a good answer, or a good question to answer. And I told him that I wanted to try and help guide people who feel like they've never had proper guidance in some sort of way, right? I get the most fulfillment when I'm able to offer someone help and they actually take that advice and they apply it in their life. They employ it in their life, and I can usually see how it takes place in their life.
Yeah.
Most of the people that I've helped that have listened and that have taken in that information and changed their life, you can see it in their actions. And whether or not, like the other day, I had a kid text me and say that he was shipping out soon. I don't know if it's the 8th of this month or the 8th of next month, but I'm not quite entirely sure. But he did say that towards the end of the conversation, he said, bro, you don't realize how much you've helped me. And just hearing those words coming from someone that I know I helped, and I'm not asking for someone to recognize that I'm helping them. I don't care personally. Like I'm going to help people no matter what, and I'm going to try and help the best way I can. But to hear those words come out of someone and they're acknowledging some sort of help and they're making an intention to tell me about it, it means the world to me.
Yeah.
And
I'd say that's like the highest praise that you can get.
Yeah, and obviously I'm not going at it from a personal gaining. I'm not trying to gain personally from it. I'm trying to direct people more towards God and a purpose, and that's what I'm ultimately trying to do. And that's how I feel like I help most people. So it's not a selfish thing that I'm doing. I'm trying to help these people become closer and more connected to God, and that's exactly what happened in this case. And I'm super proud of the kid because he's on the right path now, and he wasn't before. So I'm very proud of him, and I'm glad that I was able to help in some sort of way, whether it was just to plant the seed or to water it a little bit and give him more of a insight on what could be, So that's kind of where my aim is at, and that's what I want to do with these podcasts. Is I want to at least try and help people that maybe don't have a direct path that they're on yet, and to help people feel like there's other people out there that can actually understand them and then understand where they're coming from, and that it's a safe place to be. And a lot of people just don't have that kind of backing anymore. So that's kind of the aim behind these podcasts as of right now anyways. Like I said, I can't tell you what my future is going to hold. I'm not that smart. But I can say what I'm aiming for now. And that is exactly what I'm aiming for. I just want to help as many people as I can.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing, because I understand enough that there are so many people that are trying to pursue the right things, that are trying to pursue truth, but again, they have a false idea of what truth is. And I think that's why it's important to have true guidance, and why it's important to surround yourself with the right people, surround yourself with the right things. Because if you don't, if you're not careful who you surround yourself with and what you surround yourself with, you're going to start believing all those wrong things, and you won't know what to do with yourself.
And then you're going to walk into spikes that in your life that you never should have stepped in, but also
Didn't
that
even
you
know
couldn't
they were
even
there.
you couldn't even see them. There was a fog. We see but through a. Let's see how I forget how it was worded. We see but through a dark glass. Lightly, not that I definitely butchered that sentence, but
What's the idea?
the idea is that when you're looking forward, you can't see all the way, and you can't really see in the right and left, but there you can see the next step, and that's it, and maybe a little bit further. So it's foggy, right?
100%.
And you got to focus on taking the right steps forward. And if you align yourself with a false reality, then all of a sudden you're taking a step off the path straight into a spike that you never should have stepped on, because now you're not aligned with the truth per se, right? In this context. So now you're walking off the path, and you're like, oh yeah, this is right, because this is what I've been telling myself this whole time. And then all of a sudden you walk into something, and you just unleash hell on yourself, and you can't really blame anyone else because you chose to walk that direction. And then all of a sudden now you have another scar, and you have to either keep going, in the darkness where you can't see a foot in front of you, like you can't even see the next step, and you're just blindly walking into one thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, or you realign yourself and try and get back on the path. And once you're on the path, you can start seeing those one steps ahead, and that's kind of where you need to be, because you can't see so far ahead, because then you get paralyzed in the moment. So you want to be present, but just looking into your future just enough to where you can see that next step in front of you. And I think that's a pretty good idea to have in your life.
I think so too. That pretty much affirms what I was saying earlier about it is so dangerous to go with the flow. If you don't have any guidance, or
if you're not aligned with the truth, it's very dangerous to go with the flow. Like I go with the flow.
Yeah.
My flow is I like to interrupt my comfort as much as possible. So
Okay.
that's my flow.
Again, I think that's why motives are important too.
Right.
If you aren't doing it for the right reasons, you're missing the whole point, and you're wasting your time.
Yeah. If it's easy, usually it's probably not something that you should do. Because if it's hard, that means it's challenging you to grow as a person, and that's what you want. That's why these uncomfortable situations. I love uncomfortable situations, because it just pushes me to be a little bit more than what I'm normally used to. Yeah. And those instances are fun. Like last night, not very good at approaching women in general.
That was something I was about to tackle on myself.
So
that's something I really struggle with.
But I forced myself to do it, and I ended up having a very, very nice conversation.
Oh.
And I had a really great night with some buddies. And while there was a lot of people there, because it was packed, but
oh yeah,
I had a good time, and I was able to meet someone new and learn about them, and they seemed equally interested in learning about me, and it was a very, very nice conversation. So I will say that when you push yourself out of your comfort zone and into something that's, for one, interesting to you, and two, scary, usually what's on the other side of it is something good. I think that's a good topic that we can end on.
Okay.
Essentially, if it's uncomfortable and it's scary, maybe you might benefit from doing it. Yeah. And so if nothing else from this episode, I think both of us can leave with that, and maybe viewers can leave with that. If it's scary and makes you uncomfortable, and it's not bad for you, obviously.
Yes.
Like if it's something
I'm glad you clarified that. I was going to say, because there's plenty of things that you can go that are uncomfortable to you, and it probably should stay uncomfortable because you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah, so those
So-
ones obviously stay away. But if it's
Yeah.
something that's genuinely interesting and you feel like you could benefit from it, and it's scary, go for it. Why not? You know?
That's-
And you're going to learn something anyways. And
That's good
always
because I could have used that last night. So I'm glad we talked about it today.
But it was great talking to you.
Absolutely.
We're going to end this episode here and maybe pick it up same topics, different topics at another time, next time we have you on.
Okay.
I'm sure there will be a moment in the future. So it was really nice talking to you.
Absolutely.
Jacob.
Again,
And
thank you for having me here.
Yes,
I
sir.
really appreciated it.
absolutely. It was a very nice talk, and I really enjoyed it.